months ago, I took a guided tour of McGill's underground medical simulation center, one of the largest in all of Canada, sprawling over 30,000 square feet. It really is a massive maze of medical marvels. But at the time of my tour, there were over 50 Canadian military personnel, all dressed in their camo greens, receiving medical training. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit odd to walk into a medical simulation center and see a platoon of soldiers walking around. I definitely started getting a little bit sweaty, and I'm sure that under those beaming medical spotlights, that my head began to glisten. Perhaps much like today. But this is what the Simulation Center does. It trains students and professionals. And the simulations aren't limited by what can be done in person because they offer augmented and virtual reality as well. What I've come to discover is that the two most commonly used engines for the development of these VR medical simulators are Unreal Engine and Unity. Now, funnily enough, Unreal Engine and Unity were initially developed for video games. That's right, thousands and thousands of video games have been and continue to be developed using the exact same software as that being used for VR medical simulators. The software is all the same, but somehow medical simulations are seen as serious innovation, whereas video games are often vilified. This creates a problem for clinical simulation work that looks like a video game. And this happens in the field of mental health, the area of my research. More specifically, I work on researching and developing more engaging and accessible treatments for depression. Depression is currently the leading cause of disability worldwide, affecting roughly 20% of people in the US and Canada, and during the pandemic, those numbers rose well above 30%. Now, this venue has 350 people seats, 350 people and seats, not both together. So if I were to ask how many of you are currently feeling depressed or experiencing symptoms of depression, I would expect roughly 100 of you to raise your hands. Except that's not true, is it? Because those of us lost within depression are probably not seated here today, right now. If you happen to be seeing this, you're more likely to be at home, watching on your phone, while trying to distract yourself from a self-barrage of intrusive thoughts. We'll come back to this in a few minutes because I first want to talk about treatments. We know that there are two main forms of treatment, those being medications and talk therapies. Unfortunately, neither works consistently and neither is broadly accessible. Antidepressant medications only work for 1/3 to 1/2 of patients, and several review papers have shown that most of these antidepressant medications are no more effective than placebo pills. Seriously, how many of you knew that? Decades and decades of pharmaceutical advancements, and still these medications work for at most 1 out of 2 of us, and many times no more effective than a sugar pill. Taking one step further, a review paper that was published just a few months ago found that, and I quote, "There is no support for the hypothesis that depression is caused by lowered serotonin activity." And this serotonin hypothesis of depression is what the medical community has been holding on to for the last 50 to 60 years. Thankfully, the track record for psychotherapy is slightly better. And for me, counseling has proven to be tremendously helpful over the years. But that leads me into problem number 2. Treatments are not easily accessible. Once again, the research repeatedly shows that 3 big barriers to treatment include the high cost of treatment, stigma, and low help-seeking behaviors, meaning that people who are feeling depressed have little to no motivation to seek out help for themselves. And this makes complete sense because low motivation is a symptom that is inherent to depression. So all this talk around treatment, or the lack thereof, to me is infuriating because I know that depression is devastating. Depression sometimes tears families apart. And of course, depression can lead to suicidal ideation and even suicide. And here's why there was a content warning at the start of my talk, because I want to share one such experience. The first time that I encountered suicidal ideation was as an undergrad at McGill University. I was 21 years old, it was late at night, I was exhausted from a long day, and I was crossing the intersection on Sherbrooke and University. I mistimed the pedestrian lights, and as I begin walking into the intersection, a taxi comes flying past me, honking loud as all hell. I'd like to say that in that moment, my heart started racing and that I feared for my life, but that was simply not true. I didn't feel anything at all. I was completely numb. I wasn't in shock, I just didn't care if things ended right then and there. And a part of me truthfully wished that they did end. The experience of suicidal ideation, just like depression, is different for everyone. But for me, it feels like I'm trapped in a nightmare that I just can't wake myself up out of. All the colors have been stripped from the world. I'm stuck within this inescapable black fog, and I feel these shadows closing in on me. I have no sense of direction, and I have no clue when this nightmare will end. If it'll end. And that's when I feel depression creep up behind me and put its long, inky black fingers onto my shoulder and whisper into my ear. You know you can't win our little game, but you can choose to have it end here. And there it is, that whisper. Hello, darkness, my old friend. If you know someone close, or if you love someone who's feeling depressed, someone who feels that phantom noose tightening around their neck, offer them a long hug. Offer them support. Send them a text that comes from the heart and show them that they matter. Because it means more to us than we can ever properly express. It's clear to me that the texts and hugs that I received at critical moments are the reason why I'm standing here today talking about a problem worth solving. Depression can be debilitating. It can even be life-threatening. Depression affects at least 1 in 5 of us, and depression doesn't have any consistently effective nor accessible treatments. So to me, solving the treatment problem begins with a pressing question. How do we engage and teach depression management skills to people who are numb to the world, who don't want to leave their house, and whose attention can literally be gone within seconds? And the answer is that we need to meet these people where they are. And so we're going to do that. And we're going to do that by putting highly engaging therapy on their phone, something we know they have, and make it look and feel like a video game, something we know they want to do. And that brings us full circle, because the answer is through therapeutic simulations that treat depression. Importantly, these simulations look like commercial video games. They're specifically designed to look like commercial video games, but they're not, because they are a form of therapy. We know that video games are incredibly immersive, engaging, and they provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment. Games and simulations can therefore serve as a bridge between escapism and education. They can envelop therapy within a captivating story, something that pulls you in and makes you sit on the edge of your seat. And best of all, absolutely best of all, is that they work. Currently, there is an FDA-approved educational video game for children with ADHD. Yes, you heard me right. An FDA-approved educational video game that is therefore prescribed by physicians for kids with ADHD. How cool is that, right? But why aren't there more? Why aren't there hundreds and hundreds more? Over 3 billion people play video games, and the research shows that people who suffer play as well. Simply put, the potential here is enormous. So as a researcher in the field, I celebrate the fact that medical simulations are deemed quintessential. Genuinely, that's fantastic. But it also really grinds my gears when adjacent forms of therapy that look like video games get deemed juvenile, unimportant, and even irresponsible, just because of a few different pixels on a screen. But these forms of simulations, the ones that look like video games, are more engaging, enchanting even, and better suited for people consumed in darkness. So when it comes to depression and other treatable mental health issues, how much longer will we allow semantics and stigma to interfere with innovation? We can continue our outdated criticisms, or we can choose to be creative. We can be indifferent, or we can be innovative. Therapeutic simulations that look and feel like video games can help people experiencing mental health issues. People like me, people perhaps like you. And that's the crux of this whole talk. It's people. This talk has not primarily been about software or technology. Those are just the vessel for change. This talk is primarily about people. People who, despite the soaring statistics, are likely not seated here today. It's for those who feel unsafe and alone. It's for the people currently being left behind. It's for those people that I continue my fight, and I invite you all to do the same.